When the second generation Garmin Epix launched way back in January 2022, it very much felt like it was identical to the Garmin Fenix except in one really key area. It had an AMOLED display where the old Fenix models used that transflective memory and pixel panel. Still, at the time, it seemed inevitable that the Epix was showing us the future of the Fenix range. Surely eventually Garmin would bring us AMOLED screens to the Fenix, and now it has, all but ending the Epix as a product. How does this new Fenix 8 compare to that original Epix Gen 2? Is it essentially the same watch? What are the differences? And if you have the Epix Gen 2, should you upgrade? I'm Cam Bunton, this is Trusted Reviews, and in this video I'll attempt to answer all of those questions. To keep things simple, I'm comparing the 47mm version of the AMOLED-equipped Fenix 8 with the 47mm Epix Gen 2. There are, of course, other models, some bigger, some smaller, some with memory and pixel displays and solar charging, but this version of the Fenix 8 is the one I see as the direct upgrade from the Epix Gen 2. Or at least the original Epix Gen 2. There were, of course, later Pro models which were slightly different. So glance at it from the outside and you'll probably think not a lot has changed from that Epix Gen 2 or the Fenix 7 that it was based on. It's got the same 5-button layout with the same industrial looking metal faceplate with those exposed screws on the lugs and the same overall rugged look. But there are changes. For instance, the black bezel around the display is slimmer, as is the metal bevel around the outside, which means there's more actual display, and that's a very good thing. And while the button positioning hasn't changed, the build and the feel of those buttons has, but I'm not sure if it's for the better. They're bigger, sure, but they don't click physically like the old ones did. They're paired instead with the vibration in the watch body, and that feeling of pressing them is a little softer with no real mechanical tactile feedback. But then, they are equipped to deal better with scuba diving, and so a change in the mechanism was likely necessary to ensure that they could handle deep water. It's also got a sensor guard on the outside to give those additional atmospheric readers a bit more protection from outside elements and impact on rocks and things like that. And if you're a long-time Garmin user, you'll be happy to know it's still using that same 22mm quick fit release system, so you can keep your old straps if you want to. So like me, you can just swap out your old favourite flexible nylon strap and carry on as if nothing's changed. And it's still got that same old charging connector on the underside, which remains the one thing that stops it feeling like a truly modern smartwatch. There's no wireless charging here. Still, I've not had any issues with it refusing to connect properly or failing to charge or just falling out, which I did using some of the older models a few years back. You'll also notice looking on the underside that the sensor makeup is also very different, and that's because the health and activity sensors on the Fenix 8 are far more capable. Like the Venue 3 and some of the other more modern watches, it's got more LEDs spread over a wider area, and that means things like heart rate and blood oxygen saturation reading isn't going to be as badly affected by moving around or drops in temperature or moisture buildup on the underside of the watch, or anything else that can get in the way of those sensors being able to detect and understand the light waves and pulses. It is worth noting here, however, that this system, called the Elevate 5, also appears in the Epix Pro model and the Fenix 7 Pro, which launched last year, as sort of mid-term upgrades to the old Epix that I'm talking about in this video. And as well as offering better accuracy, has ECG and skin temperature reading abilities, overall making it a more comprehensive and more accurate sensor system than what's on the non-Pro version of the Epix Gen 2. So I mentioned the display upgrade at the beginning of this video, and there's more to it than it simply being bigger. Yes, despite it being the same 47mm case, it's gone up from 1.3 to 1.4 inches, but there's more to it than just size. Not only does the larger size help make things more visible, but it's also loaded with richer graphics and smoother animations. The Epix Gen 2 very much felt like, for the most part, it was largely the same interface as the more basic memory and pixel displays on the old Fenix models, where the new Fenix 8 is much more in line with the smooth, fluid, and sometimes playful animations that you would see on the Venue 3. In that way, it's trying to close that gap between being a serious sports watch that's all about performance and being a competitive smartwatch that people might consider alongside the likes of the Apple Watch Ultra or the Galaxy Watch Ultra. So if I had to put a pin on the one thing that makes the biggest difference switching from the old Epix to this new Fenix 8, it's that. And it's mostly noticeable in the little animations you get when you do things like meet your steps goal for the day, or at the end of a run when you've just done your quickest 1K split or 5K. These animations are more complex and richer. You also see it in the watch faces and the customization of those and the general interface, or navigating through data glances or engaging with those glances to drill down into the details. It's not just that the graphics are richer, but also the animations seem smoother and more fluid. It's just a tighter, nicer looking display and software integration. And you get that without losing out on battery life. In fact, you might eke out a bit more if you're the type that has the always on display enabled. In regular use, you'll get 16 days from either watch, with the display switching to standby when it's not in use. But with the always on enabled, which shows a dimmer watch all the time, the Fenix 8 will give you 7 days where the Epix does 6. There are a couple of other added features that you will get on the new Fenix 8 with the AMOLED display that you didn't get on the original Epix Gen 2. One of those is the LED-based flashlight built into the top edge of the phone. It's a handy inclusion and one that we have previously seen on the larger models of the high-end Garmins, but it's now on the regular models too. You also get a microphone and a speaker, and that's primarily useful if you want to use the Garmin voice assistant. It is a pretty basic assistant, but it's built into the watch and doesn't require a smartphone connection, but you can use it to do things like set timers or start activities or save locations. Personally, to me, it's not something that makes a massive difference to how I use the watch, but maybe it does for you. Let me know in the comments. Now, comparing and giving advice on fitness and health tracking can be a complicated thing, if only because Garmin churns out so many different variants of each device. And so with the 2nd gen Epix, there was a model with multi-band GPS tracking and one without. I've been using the Sapphire version, which does have it. And so what I found when it comes to tracking distances and accuracy along routes is that the two watches are largely the same. They even do a good job of it when I'm running under trees and the view of the sky isn't especially clear. With that said, I found that the GPS tracking on the Fenix is a tiny bit more responsive. For instance, at the start of the run, it seems to lock onto the GPS quicker, so I can start quicker. And as I've mentioned already, the health sensor system underneath is more capable. And while data during running isn't especially off the mark with the Epix 2nd gen, the Elevate 5 sensor under the Fenix 8 tends to do a better job at trickier workouts like kettlebell sessions. Those types of workouts where my arm is in constant motion with my wrist and hand changing angles and moving quite a lot, it seems more stable. What's more, it's more responsive when my heart rate jumps up suddenly at the beginning when the intense intervals of my sessions start. Otherwise, the experience of using them is generally very similar. Yes, you do get a bit more consistency and responsiveness and reliability and accuracy from the new Elevate 5 sensor, but when it gets into the Garmin Connect app on your phone at the end, the results look pretty much the same. And the conclusions that the app comes to about your fitness and health levels is again pretty much the same. So both can tell me pretty accurately when my body battery is empty or dropping, so I know when I need to rest and when I can push. I can load training sessions from the coaching part of the app as well, which I regularly make use of to mix up my running routine and keep myself motivated. What I'm saying is, while the Fenix's system is better, the fact that you can get a good sense of your fitness and health from the Epix might mean it's worth picking up one of these older models instead, because the Fenix is really quite expensive this year. And that's putting it mildly. I've seen this Epix Gen 2 go for as little as £500 now, where this new Fenix 8 is about £900, which is almost double. And you'll still get a colour screen, solid fitness performance, and the ability to load offline music from YouTube, Spotify, Amazon or Deezer, and of course, you still get Garmin Pay, which is pretty limited in terms of which banks actually support it for contactless payments, but it's a useful feature to have in a pinch. So in the end, yes, the Fenix 8 is clearly an upgrade on the older Epix, and one I would be tempted to upgrade to if I was in the market, but only when it's been on the market for a little longer and the price comes down, because at its current price point, it's incredibly hard to recommend wholeheartedly. I have that bit of a reservation that goes, not sure it's worth £900. And if I was looking for a high-end, durable sports watch from Garmin, I would probably go with the Epix Gen 2 Pro model, which I'm not comparing in this video, because it's largely the same as the Fenix 8, and still cheaper. But if you have the budget and are upgrading from a 3 to 4 year old Fenix and you love the range, absolutely upgrade. It's a brilliant all-round sports watch and one I think that's hard to beat in terms of performance and features. It's just eye-wateringly expensive. Let me know what you think of this new model. Is it a genuinely good upgrade from the old Epix or not? You can use the comments or you can grab me on social media. I'm at Cam Bunton. If you did like this video, please do leave a thumbs up, subscribe and tap that notification bell, and I'll see you again in the next one. Thanks so much for watching. Bye bye.